All right, so we're at the halfway point of the college football season. It's week 8. We got one of the primetime matchups of 2024 down in Austin this weekend. And I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea who is a legit contender or pretender in the SEC right now. Okay, well, I know one legit pretender. I know one legit contender, but everyone else kind of up in the air. And that's the beauty of the chaotic season that we have ahead of us. That's why we love this sport. And even though I don't truly feel comfortable with these tier rankings, I love doing this type of content. You seem to enjoy it because you click on the video all the time. So let's go into week 8 and do our tier list for 2024. What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video. Hit the ring notification down below. That way you keep up with everything that we're doing on the channel. Live reactions, post-game shows, Dave Talk Ball, Chris Monday Morning Power Hour, whatever it is. And also, just hit subscribe. It takes like 5 seconds. That way you're able to keep up with all of our content. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. If you want the back and forth banner to go along with me, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter and Instagram. And to check out all of our great work, make sure that you visit secunfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days with RHOBACK.com. But when you use the promo code SECU for 20% off your very first purchase. Guys, fall pictures are going to be around the corner with your significant others. You want to be dressed the nine on game days. You got sweater weather, polo season, whatever it is, a pullover. Make sure that you go ahead and get those at RHOBACK.com using the promo code SECU for 20% off. As always, the PSA of all PSAs, this list is interchangeable. Just because if you're a contender this week does not mean I won't bump you down to wait and see. Just because if you're listed as a pretender doesn't mean I can't put you in the spoiler role. We also have a little bit of a change this week. So still 2025. We still have pretender. We still have spoiler. We're adding in one more time. Still wait and see. And we're adding in playoff bound. Playoff bound, there's one team. I'm pretty sure you can guess on who that is. Let's start off with 2025. Mississippi State. The stat of the day. You played really well against Georgia. I mean, it was a 10-point swing all the way down to the bottom of the game. And also, Michael Van Buren is showing you that there is a little bit of life in Starkville. Not enough to go ahead and say that you're entering the spoiler category, but you have had your way with Texas A&M over the last few years. Maybe that Stark Vegas magic comes on up against the Aggies who are riding high coming off a bye. Auburn, you didn't play last week. That's a good thing. We have no idea what you're going to be moving forward. You travel to Faurot Field in Como, Missouri to be able to take on the Tigers that kind of got back their mojo against the Minutemen because it literally took like a minute for them to dominate in Massachusetts at what looked like a high school stadium. But regardless, you're a pretty good team if you don't turn the ball over. In fact, you're actually masquerading as a bad team that is a good team because of the turnovers are the only talking point that we have right now. But the players are there. There's confidence. And all it takes is one massive win to kind of turn the tides on your season. And maybe I'll put you in pretender category next week. All right, pretender. There's a few more teams added here. Basically, the pretender is you're going to maybe go to a bowl game. You're maybe not. It's really going to be based off of how you look over the next 2 weeks. Florida, I have no idea if Billy Napier is going to be around much longer. You get the bye week next week before you go travel down to Jacksonville to take on Georgia. But the play calling is really frustrating. The insufficient inconsistencies, the fundamental mistakes that a year 3 coach is making are rookie ball type level casualties. I mean, 12 men on the field for a field goal right before halftime, being down at the 1 yard line and not protecting the ball that leads to a turnover. And even though your defense had a really strong performance against Nico Iamaleava, and even though you did see DJ Lagway kind of pick up the pace with Shamir Dike at the back of the end zone, the fact that you didn't go for it when you're playing with house money is very infuriating to me. And it's infuriating to fans down in the swamp. The reason why they're drinking during don't drink and drive PSAs is because they realize this is the hell they're stuck with. Billy Napier being conservative. This was a game to where it didn't bode well in your favor to have to go to overtime on the road at Rocky Top. And this is a game that 9 times out of 10, you win. So it's very frustrating because of now you're going to play against Kentucky. You've owned Kentucky for a while, but DJ Lagway is making his first actual start where every single rep is going to him because Graham Mertz's college career is over. And we wish him nothing but the best. But it just feels like that could have been a win that changed the entire trajectory. That maybe Billy Napier wouldn't have a second chance, but he would at least have until the end of the season to reevaluate everything. The focal point would be on, well, what can we do to better him if he does start getting us to bowl eligibility? Now it just feels like the writing is on the wall. Jimbo Fisher, after a win against Mississippi State, was let go. I think that you could be seeing the exact same thing on Sunday morning with Scott Strickland, regardless of the outcome against Kentucky. And speaking of which, Kentucky, you're a solid team in terms of your defense is playing out of its freaking mind. You find a way to keep things interesting. Your offense does have a little bit of firepower with Dane Key, Jamori Macklin, Barian Brown, Demisumo Karangbe. I like Brock Vandergriff and how he fits in this offense, but just the careless penalties. I am one of the very few that said Vanderbilt had a solid game plan, and they showed you who they were as a program in that win in Lexington. But it's basically like they were at the 95-yard marker, almost there, and because of the careless penalties, the mental mistakes, the insufficiencies, the fourth down blunders, Kentucky got to just push them into the victory column. Like, that's what happened. Because of in an instant, a turnover, a bad play call, a field goal that isn't muffed up by the snap, that changes the trajectory of the game. And maybe the Wildcats are actually being talked about now in that spoiler conversation, but they're not because of the careless errors. There's so much to like about Kentucky, and there's so much to also disdain about Kentucky. And that's kind of the bottom line that it feels like every single year. We like where they are, but we don't love where they are. It's kind of like having a Subway sandwich in a 6-inch when you really want a foot long. Yeah, it'll do. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. Also, Oklahoma, hate to do this to you guys. You're a pretender. You are this year because your defense can only do so much. That's kind of the scary part. I look at that game against Texas and the Red River Shootout and the fact that they gave up as many points. They did 24 points through the first 3 quarters. That's not a bad performance. That's one of the best offenses in college football. They have weapons that can slice and dice you apart. Basically, every wide receiver is a type of poison, whether arsenic is Isaiah Bond or anthrax is Silas Bolden, whoever it is, they got dudes. Like, they can easily capitalize and take over games. The defense did its job. There is just no offense, and there's no offensive game plan. And the scary part is Seth Luttrell had 2 weeks to kind of understand, hey, he's not playing. So what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to call an offensive game plan that is now built around a strategy to put Michael Hawkins in a blender and basically make up a lot of mistakes. I don't know if Hawkins is a good quarterback. I don't know if Jackson Arnold is a good quarterback. It's so hard to judge both of them because we don't have an entire synopsis with solid wide receivers, with a stable offensive line, with a consistent play design and play calling, to where at this point, every win is just kind of a blessing. And it's kind of funny that now we have to turn to the defense. Oklahoma's solid defense that, yes, did give up over 30 points in the Red River Shootout for one of the biggest blowouts in recent history, but still, they did its job. They forced an interception early on in the game. Kip Lewis is the reason why you have a win in conference play. The defense is having to step up and basically be the offense. And that's not sustainable for 13 games. It's certainly not sustainable for 8 games in SEC play. You're going to drop a matchup that you probably should win, and it may even be this weekend against South Carolina. Speaking of which, South Carolina, welcome on into the spoiler category, where you probably are not going to go to the college football playoff, but you still have a shot of ruining someone else's day. And South Carolina, they are the prime suspect. Again, the wild card of 2024. Because they are a pick 6 away from Garrett Nussmeier and a blown call by refs. Yes, South Carolina fans, I'm on your side for this one. From winning against LSU, you're a couple of fumbles and also just not a missed 2-point conversion away from marching on into Tuscaloosa and taking down the Alabama Crimson Tide. And you already showed the best version of yourself against Kentucky. So you still have games ahead against Texas A&M, against Missouri, against Clemson, to where if this offense is just able to connect on the explosive plays, if you watch Nick Harbor actually live up to his EA College Football 25 ranking, if you watch Mazeo Bennett take that next step forward as the number 1 receiver, if you watch the offensive line create opportunities for Rocket Sanders, for Oscar Attaway, for Juju McDowell to be able to find creases and take off into the end zone like they're basically running at the Kentucky Derby, you have a shot because your defense is so damn good. Your defense is one of the best in college football, and it certainly is one of the best in the SEC. But the fundamental mistakes, the careless errors, and also for Beamer Ball being so great on special teams, why are you sending out a kicker in Alex Herrera that does not make that kick? And 9.99999 times out of 10, he doesn't make that kick. And if you go for it on fourth down, the way that Alabama's defense played in that matchup, maybe Lenore Sellers throws a pick six. Maybe he throws a touchdown pass. Maybe he just finds a way to tuck it and run, bulldoze over a linebacker, and put himself for a first down, and the drive continues. They will ruin someone's playoff chances. It may be Texas A&M. It may be Mizzou. It may be Clemson. They're going to be a spoiler, but they're not a college football playoff team. They're not a pretender in terms of where they are, because at least when the offense is humming, there's life, unlike there is with Oklahoma. And I feel like that this could be a matchup where anything and everything is on the table down at Memorial Stadium this weekend. Speaking of which, Vanderbilt, you're still in the spoiler category. Technically, you're not out of the college football playoff hunt. And Pavia Power, again, we have an NIL deal for you, Diego. All you got to do is come sign on with us at Thompson Tech. The Red Wolves are welcoming you. And we're going to bring in Eli Stowers, too. We've had this conversation. Our GM has made it clear that Eli can come with you. Cedric Alexander can come with you. He may not be the number one running back, but he can come with you. This defense is playing out of its mind. This defense has done its good job. I think the other part that's really important here is that there is only one style of offense that the Commodores run, but like an anchor that weighs you down, it weighs down defenses. Like, they don't know how to stop it. And here's the best part. They're tempting them. Every single time that you hear conversations going on the opposing sideline with coordinators, it's because Vanderbilt's saying, hey, we're going to do this. We're only going to do this. We're not going to change up our MO. Stop us. And if you do, we have to bend the knee. But if you can't, well, unfortunately for you, I'm sorry, but this is just kind of the case that we're dealing with. We are who we are as a program, and it's working. They're sitting at 4-2. If they don't fall to the level of competition like they did against Georgia State, they're sitting at 5-1. And now, just think about this, in the world of 2024, with a college football playoff synopsis on the line, College Game Day may make a trip over to Nashville, Tennessee, the home of Vanderbilt, which right now still has a stadium underneath construction. And when they beat number 1 Alabama, it was 95% Crimson Tide fans. And it's going to be the same thing of Austinites traveling up to Broadway because if they want to go have fun on the town. But they can get that win. They're a spoiler. I'm not ready to put them in the college football playoff hunt just yet. What I am willing to do is at least say they belong in this aura and energy of being in the conversation for ruining else someone's day. Wait and see. These are teams that, again, I got to wait and see more. Arkansas, you're coming off of a bye week. You got the best win in college football in your trajectory underneath Sam Pittman since probably the win over Texas. And the win over Texas was more so a victory because of it's just the way that we've talked about these two teams. One kind of cast off to the wayside and one that really is put in center stage. Besides that, this is the biggest win of Sam Pittman's career. And it could be, in my opinion, a coach-saving win. It could be a season-defining win. But how do you look now? Because if we've watched as Arkansas has a roller coaster of emotions on Saturdays, we don't know what version we're going to get. It's basically like opening up a box of Cracker Jacks and pulling out that prize. We don't know what's in there. We don't. Because if I've watched them outgame Oklahoma State and Texas A&M, I've watched them have a better offensive performance than Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. I've watched their defense force opponents like Tennessee to be one-dimensional as an offense and say, this is the only way that you're going to win. And by chance, we do the same thing. Dylan Sampson, Jaquindon Jackson, they're both running backs. They both know how to pile drive forward for an easy 6 points. They know what they're doing. But I've also seen them blown coverages. I've also seen them miss wide receivers for an easy interception. I've also seen them not be aggressive and go for it on fourth down. And I've watched them not settle for points when they were too aggressive. So it's a wait and see moment. LSU, the last 3 times that they've traveled to Fayetteville, have struggled in this matchup. The battle for the boot has always been a really close call for the Tigers and Razorbacks. And the Hogs could actually win this game. And now they're sitting in the hunt for the college football playoff. They have 1 conference loss. That's kind of the crazy part that we're forgetting right now. They still can somehow make it to Atlanta. And 9-3, this is a very solid 9-3 team. But they also could be sitting at 4-3 this weekend if Taylor Green has the same mental mistakes, if the defense allows explosive plays to Aaron Anderson, to Kyron Lacey, to a healthy CJ Daniels. Everything is on the table, so I'm not ready to go ahead and lean that far. Same thing with Mizzou. Congratulations. You're back to the Mizzou that we all knew at the start of the season. The one when I said, as I hopped on the bandwagon, is going to make the college football playoff. And technically right now, you still can't. Technically right now, it's not off the table, especially when you have games against Oklahoma, when you have games against South Carolina, when you have games against Arkansas. They could all end up being substantial wins that catapult you and bolster up your resume. And Alabama doesn't seem so daunting anymore in 2 weeks. But Brady Cook has not been himself. And I don't think that's entirely his fault. I think that he's been dealing with injuries. I think the offensive line has missed far too many blocks at times. He's been sacked a little bit too much. I think that his shoulder isn't in place. The same thing also goes for the insufficiencies in the play calling, but also the blundering mistakes on the offensive line. A 67-yard touchdown that could have been the difference and changed the trajectory down in College Station gets called back because of an illegal lineman downfield. The defense has done its job against weaker competition, but you just watched as Connor Wigman had his way and picked apart the Tigers secondary for roughly about 3 quarters. So what version are we seeing? Auburn is a team that can easily find a way to mess it up for themselves, but you can find a way also to mess it up for them. Talent-wise, these two really aren't that far apart, but Brady Cook doesn't turn the ball over. I trust more of the offensive line creating openings for Nate Noel and for Marcus Carroll, and I think that they have a better defense in Como. But I'm in wait-and-see mode, because if they come out sluggish once again, the way that they did against Vanderbilt, the way they did against Texas A&M, this is a good SEC team, but it's not a college football playoff one. Let's talk about Ole Miss. They belong in this category too. I'm not ready to give up on Ole Miss as a college football playoff team. You see, as Jackson Dart kind of throws on the hood, sits there and goes, "We got to win every game. We got to win every game. Win on out. And basically, he's pulling the Anakin Skywalker at this point. And, you know, The Revenge of the Sith is an okay movie. This Ole Miss team is an okay team. I'm not ready to give up on them. With how we've seen the parity in college football this year, don't kid yourself and say, well, Ole Miss is going to lose to Arkansas and beat Georgia. It can happen. It very well can happen. And that Arkansas game is on the road, so it does benefit them a little bit more because it would be a road win. The game against Georgia still is going to be a ranked matchup more than likely. And they have a game against Oklahoma where that defense, if it does its job, will at least give the offense a chance to come on back. So I'm not ready to give up on Ole Miss. This is still one of the best defensive fronts in college football. This is still one of the best wide receiver cores in college football. This is still one of the best offensive play designs in college football, and they're great inside the red zone. So you tell me why I should give up on Ole Miss. They're in wait-and-see mode because of if they have the type of performance as they did against Kentucky, against Arkansas, against Georgia, against Oklahoma, they are taking an L. But if they have the type of performance that they had against South Carolina, they're at least going to keep things interesting down the stretch. Now, one more time. There is no contender this week. I've already told you guys this. There is no contender. It's one more time. Because one more time means I got to see it one more time before I even consider you in the college football playoff hunt. Every single one of these teams belongs there. For starters, it's LSU. LSU is a cockroach that refuses to die. And the best part is that even when you beat it to oblivion with your shoe, you got to make sure that you see the blood and guts kind of protrude on out. Because until that clock strikes 0, they're in it. Until you see the scoreboard read with an L on the record sheet, they're in it. Until you see a team celebrate with their coach on the sidelines, they're in it. Because LSU did not lead for a single second on Saturday night in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and still won the game. Because why? Because they kept it in it. Their defense is sound enough to make sure that they will not be falling too far behind. They may be down. They may give up a point. But the way Blake Baker, the way that Bo Davis, the way that Corey Raymond, the way that this staff has been able to get players to wake on up, whether it be Weeks, whether it be Major Burns, whether it be with the design blitzes, whoever it is, you see how good this defense can be when things are clicking. And they're keeping the offense afloat. And meanwhile, the offense has playmakers. And they weren't even fully healthy last week because they didn't have CJ Daniels. They did have Chris Hinton. But yet, Kyron Lacey, you need a big-time play. Guess who stepped on up? Hey, Aaron Anderson, you need a big-time play. Guess who stepped on up? And it just feels like, again, this cockroach mentality of an atom bomb can go off, yet here we are still finding a way to survive, is going to be their backbone. Brian Kelly is not losing many games. He's on the trajectory for another 10-win season down in the Bayou. And on top of that, because of much like Arkansas with a non-conference loss, sitting at 7-1 guarantees you a spot in Atlanta. And if you make it to Atlanta, even if you are a 3-loss team, you're not going to be left out of the college football playoff. But as good as they looked against against Ole Miss, they looked awful against USC in the second half. They looked awful at times against Nichols. They looked awful at times against UCLA and South Carolina. So what version are we getting of LSU on the road? 2 back-to-back road tests. Fayetteville and College Station. You win both. I have a permanent marker. I will gladly write it on my college football playoff list. You belong in that same category. Let's also talk about Texas A&M. That's another game. You travel to Starkville. In years past, this is a loss. I'm sorry. You can call it a trap game. You can call it a close call. You can call it a game that probably we should have won. No, it's a loss. That's what it is. But that might be a Jimbo Fisher thing. The way this team has transformed. I know that I said the offensive line is playing above average. It's playing damn good. It is. It's playing above average for what I would say in the SEC. But for A&M standards, it's playing better than ever. It's playing so much better over the last 3 years than the last 3 years combined. The quarterback play has been phenomenal. You got Marcel Reed to feel comfortable enough to leave points on the board, but still find ways to win. He was 3-0 as the starter. So I don't want to hear complaints and go, he's not the right guy. No, he's a good dude, and he's put himself in the right trajectory. A&M also has a culture. A&M also has an identity. That's the beauty of what the Aggies are right now. They're a physical front that knows how to run the football, knows how to set themselves up in third and manageable, and knows how to play defense. That defense now is one cohesive unit. Nick Scorton, welcome back in on the conversation about being an SEC Defensive Player of the Year and first-round pick. Shamar Stewart, welcome on into the category about being one of the more underrated pass rushers. Torian York, Scooby Williams, welcome on into being one of the best cop buddy duos at linebacker. Des Ricks, congratulations on living up to the 5-star hype. Marcus Ratcliffe, everyone is doing their job defensively, and you're starting to see an offensive identity in the passing attack. Whether it be with Thor at tight end, whether it be with Moose Muhammad, whether it be with Noah Thomas, whether it be with Terry Bussey, whoever it is, you're starting to feel like that this team is trending upward. And you can always go back to the 8-ball and Le'Veon Moss because he's going to find a way to make things magical in the open field. That's what you got. But it's got to start this weekend against Mississippi State because of right now, energy is high in College Station. The 12th man feels like there is an opportunity for them to make the college football playoff, and I am not ready to put them there. And I think many of us aren't either because of we've been in this situation before and we always have buyer's remorse. It's like whenever we go to the blackjack table and we see a new dealer and the first hand comes out really strong and we hit 21 and everything's going to be fine. And then we're down $300 and we're like, we were just here last night. Did we not learn anything? But then we go to a new casino and now we're getting our luck back. That might be Texas A&M. New casino, new coach, new energy with Mike Elko. Let's also talk about Alabama. It's Alabama. I'm not ready to count them out. Neither should you. You shouldn't. You'd be foolish if you did. You'd be foolish if you did. You wouldn't. You know it. It hurts. They rank top 10 in scoring. They also rank top 10 in total yards offensively. And you're going to tell me that that team is not in the one more time conversation? Their defense is awful. It's not correctable this year either. What you have on the field, the way that they're making mistakes on third and long, the way that they're allowing teams to convert, and basically they have a permanent residency on the football field because they live out there and they're basically giving their offense like a quick timeshare. That's what you're dealing with. But it's Alabama. And again, this comes down to coaching. It's not the players. It's not the personnel. It's not the system. It's the coaching. Coaching has been dreadful this year. It has been pathetically embarrassing. And every Crimson Tide fan has a reason to be upset at Kalen DeBoer because of what you experienced for the last 15 plus seasons. I get that. I completely do. But it is too soon to sell your stock on Kalen DeBoer, on this Alabama team, on this staff. You have a quarterback that every single week can find a way to make magic, and also he can find a way to make mistakes. You also have a team that has a great rushing attack with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, but the play calling isn't catering to them, which I don't understand why. It's a 3-man arsenal that basically, if you just find one more dude, can create the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of the SEC. That's what you have at your disposal, but it's not showing up right now. Defensively, you are what you are. You're going to give up explosive plays. You're going to create turnovers. You're going to be on the field for a very long time if coaching doesn't change that. Offensively, you're going to find your way into the end zone for 6 points, or you're going to be turning it over, which could lead to 6 points. That's Alabama in a nutshell. But there's one more game. Third Saturday in October. Can this offense pick itself off the mat? Or can this defense find a way to deliver? Because that really is the storyline, which leads us to our next team. Congratulations, Tennessee. Tennessee, underneath Josh Heupel, has been shut out in the first half back-to-back weeks. I'm going to tell you guys something, and you don't want to hear it. That's never happened for Josh Heupel. Ever. In his head coaching career, it's never happened. That means when you go back to his time at UCF, he was never shut out in the first half of either game. And about 3 weeks ago, we were talking about this offense as being one of the best in college football. Which is why when I say if you sold your stock on Tennessee missing the college football playoff, I'm hopefully going to buy it at a very cost-affordable price because that is egregious. It takes one play, one snap, one drive, and here we are. It's down. An opponent's down by 25 points. An opponent is now looking at the scoreboard and going, what? Where did we go wrong? You didn't go wrong. Tennessee just woke up. That's kind of the bottom line. They have the great run game. Dylan Sampson is one of the best running backs in the SEC, if not one of the best in college football. On top of that, you also have a trajectory of wide receivers that have shown you in years past can make plays. And the crazy part is there's a wide receiver by the name of Mike Matthews. Most of you have probably heard of him, but for those of you that haven't, he's a 4-star that came out of the state of Georgia, committed to the Rocky Top program, and he needs to start rocking and rolling. He needs to start being a part of the system. Because if sometimes great coaches realize, I have veterans on the squad, but I have a dude that's younger and better than them, it's time to get him involved. It's time to get Mike Matthews involved. It's time to make him an X factor for this passing attack. And I love Dante Thornton, and I love what I've seen from Chris Brazzell, and I love Squirrel White, but they're not getting the job done, and neither is Nico. And I know what you're going to say, Nico is not the problem. No, Nico is a part of the problem. He's not the sole problem. The offensive line has been abysmal. The offensive line can't hold a block. The wide receivers are missing wide open concepts. They're running the wrong routes. They're not feeling comfortable coming out of their breaks. But Nico's also not feeling comfortable in this system, and he's not trusting himself enough to go and utilize his God-given ability as being athletic as all hell to tuck and run and pick up a first down. There's all mistakes everywhere, which is so frustrating for Tennessee fans because you see what the upside is of this offense, and this defense is finally up to the standard that you've always wanted. The defense has been the backbone of this team, and we don't talk about it enough. And here's the scary part. You may have lost your big blue chip guy. Yes, I know you have James Pierce, but Keenan Peely, that was a guy that was had the green dot. That was a guy that was the play caller. That was the guy that was the enforcer, the captain of sorts. Now you have some concerns at the second level. So I'm not ready to give up on Tennessee. I know the defense is going to come out showing against Alabama. It's the third Saturday in October. They want to smoke them stogies. Can their offense pick up? Because this is a game where you kind of say to yourself, you know what? I think that we can get there. I think that we can get to that level. It's also a game where things can go off the rails pretty immediately. And by the fourth quarter, you're wondering what is so wrong with us. And do we even have a shot at finishing 8-4? Georgia belongs in this category too. Georgia is the one I feel the most confident in. A loss to Texas, not that big of a deal. You'd have 2 losses to teams that were ranked either in the top 5 or at number 1 or eventually became number 1. That's good enough to get you to the college football playoff. I don't think anybody would look at a 10-2 Georgia team sitting at home on December 6th or whatever the day is of the SEC championship and go, no, that's not a playoff team. No, that's a playoff team. But they don't look like a playoff team right now. They're making fundamental mistakes. They can't run the football to save their life. It's very underwhelming when you think of years past of how this team has been so dominant on the ground. They're giving up far too many explosive plays in the secondary. They actually rank in the top 20 of explosive plays allowed this year. They also aren't making fundamental tackles. It's more than just Mike Bobo's play calling. It's everything and anything under the sun. They got to get back to the Georgia that we knew. And all it takes is one game. Imagine if they march on into Austin, Texas, and Carson Beck has the performance of a lifetime. And here we are now talking about them as a team that has kind of turned the corner and better their odds. Is anybody going to be shocked? No. You want to know why? Because it's Georgia. In fact, there's many of us here that are kind of betting against them this weekend, all saying that the Longhorns will handle business. Nothing is going to slow them down. And when we get to the fourth quarter and they're down by 10, all of us are going to sit here with egg on our face, but we're each going to say, no, I can see where that happened. They're a play away from being right back in the hunt of national title contention, and they're a play away from now having to win out against Tennessee, against Ole Miss, and against Georgia Tech. That's where they are right now. That's the entire vicinity of what we have currently going on with Georgia. They're a sound team. They're a fundamentally sound team. They're a freaking good team. But they're just not acting like it right now. And then college football playoff contender. This is the team that I've written in permanent marker. I don't know if they'll be the 1 seed. I don't know if they'll be the 3 seed. I don't know if they'll be the 7 seed, but they will be in the college football playoff, and that's Texas. Texas wins this weekend. Now the question is, what seed are we going to say is the lowest they can be? Because they won't be 12, and they won't be 11, and they won't be 10. The question is, will they host a playoff game? Because if you beat Georgia, where's the excuse at this point? I'm tired of seeing people come up with reasons to say, oh, Texas hasn't been tested. Like, they didn't travel to the largest stadium in college football and basically be the enforcers and the bullies because they looked like the national championship team from last year. I'm tired of seeing people say, well, they went to the Cotton Bowl, and because of, there's no offense for Oklahoma, it was a big-time blow. You realize that Quinn Ewers was not Quinn Ewers that day. Number 3 was actually somewhat of a problem and not a solution. But that is what national championship teams do. And that's what teams that go deep into the college football playoff do. They have a second punch. And sometimes they have a counter move. And sometimes they also have the agility to avoid some misblows. The second punch is the rushing attack. They average 5.9 yards per play, and Jared Gibson didn't even see much action. They have a counter punch, which is their defensive front 7, forcing a quarterback to have to throw on the run and basically toss out of bounds because of if he throws anywhere else, the secondary is going to pick it off. And they have the agility to put teams in 3rd and long and put themselves in 3rd and short. So they end up missing and making the most of it. That's Texas right now. They can beat you through the air. Everyone can be a number 1 wide receiver on any given Saturday. They can beat you on the ground. They're one of the best teams when it comes to running the football. They lost 2 of the best defensive linemen in college football, and you would never be able to tell the difference because Vernon Broughton is just bringing it this year. Because of the way that Bill Norton's playing this year. Because the way Ant Hill is playing this year. Which, by the way, give him a lot of credit. Probably the team's MVP at this point. And if not him, Colin Simmons has got to be at least a runner-up defensively. Secondary is not allowing wide receivers to get past them. They aren't. And if they win this weekend, the last thing I want to hear from anybody is, oh, well, no, that's it. Just Georgia's not good this year. Really? The team that won 2 national titles within the last 5 seasons, the team that had the number 1 recruiting class last year isn't good? Can we stop moving the goalposts for every other team and pushing it back for Texas? They're a playoff team. Right now, in my opinion, they are the best team in college football. They don't have the best win. They don't even have one of the top 10 best wins. But I can find a flaw in every other contender in the sport. I can find a flaw with Ohio State. I can find a flaw with Oregon. I can find a flaw with Georgia, with Alabama, with Ole Miss, with LSU, with Clemson, with Miami, with every team that we consider in the hunt for the postseason. Penn State, for that matter, needed overtime to beat a USC team where everyone thought we had a Lincoln Riley an apology. But we don't have to say that about Texas. Where have we had to say that about Texas? We haven't. And we're not going to. So that's why I have them in the college football playoff contender category. Much like Mississippi State looking ahead to 2025, you can be a Texas Longhorn fan and say, you know what, we're looking forward to December. Now the question is, are we hosting a playoff game? Are we traveling elsewhere? Or are we just going to be able to sit at home and wonder, what game are we going to play in the semis? But let me know in the comment section down below. Tier list ranking, I didn't feel comfortable this week with most of it, so which was right, which was wrong. Let me also know what you'd like moving forward. Like, rate, review, subscribe, follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks. Peace.